Ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding for the worship call to the Mayor.
Good evening, everybody. Please remain standing whilst my chaplain says prayers.
Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, we're reminded this evening through the agenda that we are called, all of us, to a personal integrity as we serve this community. As presentations are made this evening, we remind ourselves of that integrity. And Father, as we move through our evening together, we're reminded that we are called to be good stewards of all that other people's industry gives us. So Father, help us at the end of this day to focus our minds on this evening and the business you have laid before us. For we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Please be seated. We'll just start with a bit of housekeeping. There are no fire alarms scheduled for this evening. Therefore, if the fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the building immediately. The fire exits are located at the rear of this room. Go down the stairs and meet in the War Memorial Park. Also, please note that this meeting is being webcast live on the internet. Please, can all members of the public switch off their phones? I believe the air conditioning may not be working, so I therefore say if you wish to take off your jackets, please feel free to do so. Right, do we have any apologies for absence? Councillor Mrs Reid.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Apologies from Councillor Goddison, Councillor Boyer and Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. Any other? Councillor James? I believe Councillor Tomlin has sent his apologies also. Any declarations of interest? No? Thank you. Right, we move on to the minutes of the council meetings held on the 14th and 21st of May. I'll draw your attention to the update sheet. There have been some corrections to those of the 21st of May. Everybody happy to approve those? Agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Right, move on to announcements. I have a number of announcements this evening. First of all, I would apologise that I did receive an email a number of weeks ago about addressing councillors at full council meeting. I make no apologies for this. I am a traditionalist and I will be continuing to address councillors as we have done in the past. There's only one exception to this. We do have two Councillor Watts, Councillor Keith Watts and Councillor Gary Watts. So for those two councillors, I will add in their first names, just for clarity. Also, just draw your attention to the fact that this is the last full council meeting that Mel O'Sullivan will be attending before her new arrival, so I'm sure you'll all join me in wishing her well. A little bit of sad news. June Brandt, widow of past Mayor Keith Brandt, thanks all those concerned for their attendance at Keith's funeral and the letters and their best wishes. As many as you will know, Keith Brandt was Mayor 1993 to 94. Another bit of sad news, Enid Shears, past mayoress, passed away in June. Her funeral has taken place and I have written and sent condolences on behalf of all councillors. Since our last meeting, I have received guests from Euskirchen for the Festival of Sport with our twin town in Germany. That took place in the borough 12th and 14th of June. And I'm pleased to say that for a little while now, we actually won the trophy this year. I think it's been in Euskirchen and they were very sad they didn't go back with it. I think they live to fight another day. Following their visit, I was lucky enough and we were invited to go and visit our twin town of Braine-l'Alleud in Belgium for the bicentenary commemorations of the Battle of Waterloo. It was a very interesting weekend and they really did well. Lots of guests and visitors. The Basingstoke Borough Council HR team dressed up as characters from The Wizard of Oz, and they won first prize for their costumes in the Basingstoke Roll on Friday the 19th of June, so well done to all of them. Another little bit of news that I now have a Twitter account at @BasingMayor, so if you want to follow it and see what I get up to, please look in. This last weekend, Basingstoke Live has taken place and it was a great success. Two-day music event ended the 4th Basingstoke Festival on a high note at the weekend. Around 23,000 people flocked to the War Memorial Park on Saturday, with attendance being swelled by the good weather, and 7,000 more came along for the shorter day on Sunday. Despite the high numbers, the crowds were well behaved and there was a great atmosphere with an outstanding mix of local talent alongside national and international performers. The success of the event was thanks to a great deal of hard work by staff across the council and partners, including the Basingstoke Life Forum and the police. So I think we all ought to thank them all very much for their work. This year's Basingstoke Variety Show, which is a charity concert raising money for my charity appeal, will take place on Saturday the 3rd of October at 7:30 at the Anvil. Tickets will be £14 an adult and £10 for children under 16 and concessions. And tickets will be available from the Anvil box office, so book now to avoid disappointment later. Moving on to October again, I'm currently in the process of organising my Mayor's Charity Week, which will take place from the 17th to the 24th of October. On the theme of my theme, community involvement, I'm trying to encourage all aspects of the community, be it business, retail, pubs, clubs, schools, individuals, parishes, everybody in the community to try and raise money in any way they choose, having events in that week to go towards the Mayor charities. I'm hoping that councillors will help me to spread the word across their wards and parishes, and I would appreciate it. And that leaves me now to pass over to the Chief Exec, who I believe has an announcement.
Thank you, Mayor. Members, I should like to provide an update on the subject of devolution and discussions to explore the merits of a possible combined authority for wider Hampshire. Exploratory work continues with the 12 principal local authorities in Hampshire, together with Portsmouth, Southampton and the Isle of Wight, to explore the potential basis for the devolution of powers from central government to local government, together with the further exploration of potential devolution of Hampshire County Council functions to Basingstoke and Deane Borough Council and other district councils. Although matters remain at an early and preliminary stage, an update report has been provided to the Cabinet meeting of the 28th of July, which I circulated to all members yesterday evening to keep members abreast of the developing picture. As a member of the Chief Executive Working Group, tasked to develop proposals for consideration by elected members, I can confirm that no decisions have been made, nor indeed can be made, without the agreement of full council. Although timescales cannot be guaranteed, I would anticipate that over the next few weeks and months, propositions will become clearer and further developed. I am therefore liaising with the Mayor with a view to calling an extraordinary meeting of full Council towards the end of September, before the next scheduled meeting of full Council on the 22nd of October 2015. A meeting in September would work well, as there should be some detail available to underpin the broad discussions held so far, which can inform the debate. This would also allow sufficient time for the will of full Council to be expressed, so as to inform the inevitable negotiations that political leaders will be involved in prior to finalising the wider Hampshire devolution proposal, if appropriate, probably in October, in time for a submission with the objective of influencing government spending review, which is anticipated in November of this year. In order to support members' consideration of the issues, I have written to group leaders offering to attend group meetings, in addition to the prospect of an all-member briefing as referenced in the Cabinet report circulated yesterday. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Right, it now gives me pleasure to be able to make some presentations to ex-members of the Council. I will invite each one up and give them their presentation, and will invite them to say some words up to 5 minutes at the end of the desk here, and then at the end of it we will have a photograph. So it gives me pleasure first to ask Paula Baker to come forward. Paula, it gives me pleasure to present you this certificate for 28 years of service. Well done. And also a little present to remember us by.
Oh, thank you.
All right,
Thank
you got it.
God, yes. It's a heavy present, and I suspect that it's one I definitely should not drop.
Please don't.
Thank you.
If you'd like to address the chamber, please feel free.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Thank you, ex-colleagues. I would like to tell you that retirement is wonderful. It really is good. It's been a pleasure and a privilege to work alongside you and to represent Overton, Lovestoke and Steventon for those 28 years. I loved every minute of it. Well, nearly. As well as the many happy hours I've spent in this building, over the years I also spent probably 11 or 12 years on various committees, boards and executives of the Local Government Association, and 9 years on its European equivalent, the Committee of the Regions. Because as local councillors, we're the ones who are the experts in how legislation actually works when it's put into practice. So the thought I would leave you with is that if any of you do get the opportunity to take your experience and share the benefit of that with the Local Government Association or the Committee of the Regions, then I encourage you to do that, because I think as practitioners locally, we have that responsibility. And I would say that there are people who are genuinely interested in hearing practical experience from local councillors. So with that thought in mind, I wish you all well for the future, especially you, Madam Mayor. I'm sure you'll have a wonderful year. It's a brilliant time serving as Mayor for Basingstoke and Dean, and I'm sure you'll do it brilliantly. And thank you all so much for this lovely certificate, and I shall now try and find out what is in the box. Something wonderful that says it's from Dartington Crystal. Oh, it's a clock with the borough crest on. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Martin.
I now ask Martin Bierman to come forward, please. So Martin, congratulations. 21 years. You don't look it. And you also have a little gift. You all right?
Yes, I think that's it.
All right. If you'd like to say a few words.
Well, firstly, thank you for this little reminder of the many hours I've spent here. I don't know whether this counts up the hours that you can clock in and clock out, but it's certainly plenty of hours when I look back. And I started thinking of why I first sought to become a councillor. And to be frank, it was because I thought things could have been done better, certainly in Chinham, and I would see what I could do. On being elected, of course, I found the truth that everybody in this room knows, that you can't flick your fingers and change things. You're faced with, dare I say it, a certain amount of internal bureaucracy and a heck more from the outside. So the achievements that I would have liked to have made were certainly not fulfilled in many cases, although I would like to think that I did make some contribution. It's very interesting now, standing on the outside and just not least trying to communicate with the council, and the barriers are even greater, and finding one's way around isn't quite as easy as it once was. So I've got to learn a new skill there, because I certainly will occasionally be getting in touch. In fact, I already have, and I think a couple of people have seen me here earlier this morning being in touch. I'm learning something new. What I learnt as a member of the council was, and I don't wish to be rude to most of the assembled masses here, was the party system, which made me even more convinced it was a bad idea at this level. But there we are, you can't have everything your way. But I felt that was the least constructive part within the council system. What was good, of course, was the opportunity to communicate with the residents, and the amazing faith that some residents put in one. I feel quite touched and honoured that people feel that you can be as much help, and the council can. Of course, it's embarrassing when you fail to achieve, but as often is the case, and I have to say one of my starting points was always, don't expect too much, but we'll see what we can do. I've had many good experiences within the council, particularly when things did work out, and like Paula, I found it fascinating being there. I was a bit hesitant at the start, but when I actually fulfilled the role, or when I was in it, I found it very enlightening, because of all the aspects of the borough that it opened to one that one never was necessarily aware of. All the fantastic things, and I say that without any hesitation, that are going on. We're not a perfect borough, there's plenty of room for improvement, but the community is great, and I think they contribute to our, I think, generally good reputation. The one thing that still leaves me a bit sad is the outcome of the mayoral savings when I was mayor, and the fact that my £25,000 has still disappeared into the ether. Whether I can, from the outside, steer that £25,000 in the right direction, I don't know, but I still remain a little miffed about losing me 25 grand. And lastly, I just want to say I so often hear in the news or on other current affairs programmes about the politicians who are all in it for themselves, and snouts in the trough and all these other, what I find, quite objectionable statements. There are MPs, councillors and other representatives who are doing it for the wrong motives and out of self-interest, sometimes to climb greasy poles, sometimes to make a bit of extra cash perhaps. But there are so many, and there are many in this chamber across all the parties and none, who are really committed public servants. And I won't stand for people outside saying they're all in it for themselves, because I see too many examples where that emphatically is not the case. So to all you good guys and gals, get on with it, enjoy it, and let me tell you, I thought I would have lots of time, this retirement thing. I've got 20 years plus of non-doing things that I should have done domestically wise, and my wife keeps reminding me I'm working on it, but at the moment I've hardly had any impact, so perhaps I do need to stay out of the circuit for quite a few years, if not forever. So thank you very much for your kindnesses. Thank you very much for being good friends, many of whom will remain friends for many years to come, I'm sure, and we'll see each other around, I'm sure. Thank you.
We did have one more for Ranul Jayawardena. I don't believe he's managed to get here this evening. No? Right. Just in case he was here in the back there. All right. Just going to take some photos. Just been brought to my attention that a number of you haven't pushed your cards into your speakers. Can you just make sure that they are in? Otherwise it looks as if you're not here. Thank you. Right, we now move on to item 6, to receive and answer any questions from the public. First one we have is from Martin Heath, if you'd like to come forward. It is rather a long question. Are you happy for it to be on the order paper, or do you want to read it out?
If I could just, my apologies, I do realise my question actually looks longer than the agenda, which wasn't my intent. But I'll make a very short statement, and then perhaps the questions can lay as the order paper. Is that all right,
Okay.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, okay, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you. I just would like to thank the council, to congratulate them again on another year of increasing the value of the cash it holds in various bank accounts around the world. Over the years, the council has managed to put away a tidy sum of £163.3 million of taxpayers' money. It is a substantial sum. By any measure, it's a substantial sum, and it's critical to the financial health of the council. Indeed, it represents some 25 years of council tax receipts for this particular council. And whilst looking at the Treasury report, it actually struck me that what we have actually is a sovereign wealth fund. You know, a fund that is generated from the asset sales of previous councils and from accumulated surpluses. And it may not be as big as the sovereign wealth funds of, say, Kuwait or Norway, but our wealth fund is equally important to us and our economy as theirs is to them. Last year, the Norwegian wealth fund, which is known as the Norwegian Pension Fund, which is run on equally prudent grounds as ours and as risk-adverse as ours, generated a 7.8% return, whereas our sovereign wealth fund only managed 1.9%. And I think it's only important that we ask questions to why our wealth fund.
I'm sorry, is this coming to a question?
It is.
You've got
Just
23
right there, Madam Mayor.
seconds left.
Yes, and so as per the order paper, perhaps we could ask the council to respond. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Isaac, you're going to respond?
Good evening, Mrs. Mayor and councillors. We seem to have sort of diverted away from the question that I was expecting to respond to. I'm not sure I can comment sensibly about whether we're a sovereign wealth fund or not. Anyway, I take it that Martin is congratulating this council on increasing the value of the cash it holds. And he makes the comment, which I think is right, that, this cash holding is vital to the council. This is a very interesting, comprehensive series of questions here, and they deserve a proper answer, and I intend to give one, and one at length. So, the first question we have is to respond to the opening remarks. Yes, the interest income of over £3 million from cash holding is important to the council and equates to over 45% of the income we get from the council taxpayers, the equivalent of £48 from each taxpayer. This income is critical in enabling the council to provide excellent services, as strongly approved of by our residents, whilst keeping the council tax at the same level for 6 years, the 6th lowest council tax in the country. So to address question 1, the portfolio underperformed the council's own targets by £412,000. This is a substantial sum of money. The main reason was a £580,000 loss in external funds due to a late investment. Why was this investment made late? The answer. The chief reason for the shortfall was that long-term gilt yields were lower than expected, so we didn't make these long-term investments and invested instead in short-term gilts, thereby producing lower returns, pending an improvement, we hoped for improvement, in long-term gilt yields. The hold-up in investing in the diversified credit funds, to which we invested, we were planning to invest 30 million in the year. We assumed that we were going to invest those in April, and we invested them in November instead. And this also meant that we earned rather less income than was estimated on that account. The delay in investing for the first time in these new external funds was partly due to underestimating the amount of time that the due diligence process would take. Because this was a new type of investment for the council and involved such a sizable sum, members were involved in assessing the suitability of the funds, went to Cabinet and Audit Committee, the selection process, and meeting shortlisted fund managers. Time was also lost due to issues relating to the departure of key personnel from one of the shortlisted fund managers, which meant that the council had to look for an alternative fund manager. A suitable fund manager has now been found, and the council is about to invest an additional £10 million with BlackRock. We're currently undertaking due diligence. But overall, I'm pleased to report that our DCF investments have performed well in their first year, returning a yield of 2.72%. Question 2. The overall return, 1.9%, as against an estimate of 2.28%, how does this compare with estimates and performances in prior years? My answer. Forecasting interest income for the Council is extremely difficult because it depends on forecasting future interest rates for the coming year at a time of volatility when experts' predictions on a rate rise, particularly by the US Fed, have been consistently wrong. Most forecasters were assuming rates would have started to increase during the year. What actually happened was that long-term rates went down. The uncertainty and volatility of investment returns is precisely why the Council has reserves, and in this case a specific reserve called the interest risk reserve, because the Council knows that there is a risk that the estimate, the target if you like, will be inaccurate. Actual performance in previous years was 2013-14 the estimate was 2.3%, the actual was 2.28%, 14-15 the estimate was 2.54 and the actual was 2.14. For both of these prior years, it was also assumed that long-term interest rates would increase in the year. Question 3. There seems to be an extraordinary high level of activity in short-term deposits, some £300 million. What is the reason for such high levels of activity? My answer. I can assure you, Martin, that this level of activity in short-term investments is completely normal. The Council's cash flow involves millions of pounds coming in and out. During a typical year, approximately £350 million comes in and £350 million goes out. And these cash flows need to be managed on a daily basis. This involves the Council using short-term investments, treasury bills and money market funds to manage the cash flows effectively. Question 4. Can you confirm that the M&G Alpha Opportunities Fund, this is one of the diversified credit funds, is a UK domiciled fund and only invests in UK-based companies? Can you confirm that the fund manager follows the Council's ethical investment policy? You've asked the same question of the other fund that we've invested in, which is the M&G Total Return Credit Investment Fund. So I can give you an answer for both. I can confirm that neither of the funds are domiciled in the UK. The Alpha Opportunities Fund is domiciled in Dublin, and the Total Return Fund is domiciled in Luxembourg. However, both are managed in the UK and are registered for UK reporting purposes. Both of the funds have a worldwide remit, which means they might be investing in any country. I can also confirm that the Council has followed its stated policy in regard to ethical investments with these funds, and officers have ensured that the fund managers have their own responsible investment policies. Question 6. It is gratifying to know that the Council looks at the risks of our investments. At paragraph 7.5, you state the portfolio had a risk score of 2.7. Can you explain how this score was calculated, given that according to Appendix 2, some £62 million of the portfolio has no credit rating? My answer. Paragraph 7 relates to the benchmarking carried out by the Council's independent Treasury advisors, Arling Close Limited. The Council's risk score is indicative and is based on a calculation performed by Arling Close Limited and relates to the Council's internally managed investments. In the calculation, Arling Close have assumed that for investments that do not have a credit rating, namely Treasury bills, they have an implied rating which is the same as the UK government, i.e. AA+. And investments in local authorities have an implied rating of AA. Question 7. Appendix 2 indicates that approximately £35 million of the portfolio will mature in the coming year. What are the plans for investing this money? Response. Oh, my answer. The investment portfolio is actively managed daily, hence the significant amount of short-term investment as per the previous answer. These maturities are part of the normal management of the portfolio. Most of the maturities relate to short-term investments and will be replaced with suitable investments within the parameters of the Council's approved investment strategy, and the precise investments will be determined as and when they mature. The officers will look for opportunities to reinvest in the longer term and maintain the balance in the portfolio between long-term and short-term cash and the strategic asset allocation. Then there was finally a question on reserves, which was, why does the Council hold 25 years of Council tax revenues? Can the Council explain where the money has come from? Has it come from the sale of assets or the gradual accumulation of budget surpluses over the years? And my response to that is the Council has £150 million of reserves as at 31st of March 2015. The money has come from a combination of proceeds from the sale of assets that have been put into capital reserves, approximately £111 million, and which can only be used to fund future capital items, and the accumulation of budget surpluses over the years that have been put into the revenue reserves, approximately £39 million. As far as the capital reserves are concerned, a large proportion of the capital reserves, £60 million, have been invested in the longer term to earn interest to help support the revenue budget. The rest of the capital reserves, £51 million, are assigned to fund the future capital programmes and major projects. As far as the revenue reserves are concerned, the Council holds revenue reserves of £39 million for a number of purposes. These include £25 million to help fund the capital programme and revenue impacts of major projects over the next 25 years. Infrastructure works, Manidown, Top of the Town, Basingview. £6 million of earmarked reserves is to fund future one-off revenue expenditure plans, and £8 million is risk reserves to fund unexpected and expected shortfalls due to falls in the Council's major income sources, these being interest, rents, business rates and rate support grant. These revenue reserves are, as Martin has commented, a vital part of the prudential financial management, and the Council's ability to meet the balanced budget requirement and enable us to meet the Council's balanced budget requirement. This Council is not allowed to borrow money to fund revenue requirements. The reserves are a key part of effective medium and long-term financial planning and are crucial to this Council's management of the year-on-year reduction in government grants we are having to deal with. The level of reserves reflects the success of the Council in planning beyond single-year budget horizons and will allow this Council to build up capacity to fund one-off costs of transformation and to finance longer-term capital and infrastructure investment to stimulate further growth in the borough and to meet housing needs at Manidown and to create new jobs at Basingview. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Isaac. Do you have a supplementary?
If I may, I believe there's no time limit on supplementaries, actually. But no, I'm not, that would be abuse for me to do that. Councillor, many thanks for that. Now, that was a very long and detailed response. And it is a little bit of a shame we've got money invested in Luxembourg and Dublin, and we have £62 million worth of our assets with no credit rating. And it's
Is the question...
Yeah, we only get 1.9% and not 7.8%. Yeah, but I believe it's true that the Council has invested in solar panels and has run a solar panel pilot project, which is excellent. Can the Council confirm that the rate of return on that investment is 15.3%? Thank you.
Councillor Isaac.
Yes. Well, can I start by saying that that these are domiciled. That they're domiciled in Luxembourg and Dublin. It's not doesn't mean that they're investing there. They're investing worldwide. You made some comment about no credit rating. I think the view that's been taken on Treasury bills by Arlene Close is pretty sound. I don't think many would disagree with that. I think they sound pretty secure to me. You make reference to our low returns of 1.9%. Well, the important thing here is that, of course, we could bet the house on the stock market, and we'd probably have done very well 2 years ago, but last year we would have done pretty badly, and we might have lost a lot. And in the careful stewardship of Kevin Jaquist, the important thing here is that we maintain, we preserve capital, we don't lose residents' money, and that's a key criteria, and we maintain liquidity. And then solar panels. Now, I know you're something of an expert on solar panels, so it's good to get to this at last. And yes, I don't know what the exact return is on the solar panels, but I know that what we're trying to achieve in the investment we are going to be making in putting solar panels on our own office buildings, and we're going ahead with that, and they'll soon be glinting from the tops of our buildings. I know that we're expecting to have good returns on those, close to sort of 10%. But the thing you've got to bear in mind about these sorts of investments is we're not comparing apples with apples, because the thing about solar panels is you don't get your money back at the end of it, and that's the difference between what we're doing and preserving our capital. We put our money in gilts for 5 years and we get it back at the end of it, plus some interest.
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
Under which part of the Constitution
is page 95 of 206 of the Constitution, paragraph 11.9, reference of question to Cabinet or Committee. Would you like me to read the part of that Constitution, Madam Mayor? Oh, well.
I think you ought to read it since you've cleared it.
Yeah. It says that any member may move that a matter raised by a question be referred to the Cabinet or the appropriate committee or subcommittee. Once seconded, such a motion will be voted on without discussion. I would like to move that question raised by the member of the public be referred to the Ordnance and Accounts Committee.
Right, it's been moved and seconded, so we'll move to a vote. Do we need to speak? Straight to the vote. So, yeah. Okay, the vote's open. Four people haven't voted yet, so we will be closing the vote in a moment. Right, we're now closing the vote. So that is lost. Move on to item 7, petitions. Have a petition presented by, I hope I pronounced this correctly, Samarth Adiampita and Florence Meller. If you'd like to come forward. I'm sure somebody will help you to switch the microphone on. Our youngsters are doing very well with IT.
Why did we think we needed a petition? United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, Article 12, states that children have the right to say what they think should happen when adults are making decisions that affect them, and to have their opinions taken into account. We have undertaken a number of traffic surveys around our school, and we have noted that the roads around our school are becoming more dangerous and more people are parking on double yellow lines and zigzags. This is breaking the law. We think we should make the roads safer before there is an accident which a child could be involved in and they could be harmed.
We asked people to sign a petition to 1. Extend 30-minute free parking to Caston's car park to create an alternative parking place to reduce cars parked next to the school. 2. Review the parking restrictions in Council Road to make bays available as a drop-off point for school children. 3. Traffic wardens to prioritise checking people don't park on the zigzag lines or double yellow lines. 4. Consult on introducing a 20 miles per hour speed limit around the school. We have collected 250 signatures. We hope you can help us to keep us safe. Thank you.
Can I thank you both very much for all the hard work you've done. You've done very well, and somebody will collect the petition from you, and we will look at it because some of it might be dealt with by the county council, so we'll look into it and somebody will get back to you and let you know. All right, but very well done. You've presented that very nicely. Perhaps another round of applause for our youngsters. Right, we have another petition which is going to be presented by Councillor Hussey.
Well, I can't follow that, Madam Mayor. I've got a petition here signed by residents from Cliddesden Road, Neville Close and Foyle Park, and it concerns what was a 40-foot high sycamore tree, which is now 30-foot high, has got some short stubby branches and not one leaf, and it looks an eyesore. Residents think it's been mutilated, but it has been done by the council's own contractors. It looks so poor, residents aren't prepared to wait for it to grow back to look more like a tree, and therefore they're requesting that the tree is removed as soon as possible.
Thank you, Councillor Hussey. We will send that directly to the portfolio holder, Councillor Eachus. Right, we move on to item 8, resignations and appointments. As per the order paper, we've got Councillor Loney to replace Councillor Watts on economic planning and housing. Is that agreed? Agreed. Mr. Nuttall has resigned from the Standards Committee and the committee is going to be reduced to 12 members. Is that agreed? Agreed. And Councillor Tomlin to replace Councillor Tilbury on the Standards Committee. Agreed? Councillor Mrs. Reid?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one additional change. For the subs for DC, we would like to replace Councillor Ostleton with Councillor Rebecca Bean.
Right. That agreed? Yep. Right. B. We have received the following nominations. Festival Management Board, Councillor Pearce. Is he proposed and seconded? Councillor Gary Watts proposing and Councillor Jones seconding. Is that agreed? Agreed. Vine Community School Community Management Committee, we have Councillor Ms James and Councillor Harvey. Is that proposed and seconded? Councillor Harvey and Councillor Phillimore. All agreed? Right, item 9, reports for decision. We have number 1, Cabinet held on 23rd of June, and I'd like to ask the leader to introduce.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It is a requirement of the Local Authority Capital Financing and Accounting Regulations 2003, which we all have known for so long, to receive 3 Treasury Management reports annually, of which this is the third, the annual report for 2014-15. Interest earnings at over 3 million account for 7% of our annual operational income, and they make a significant contribution to our ability to deliver high-quality services and facilities, many of which are outside the scope of a normal district council. The earnings have also enabled us to hold council tax unchanged for 5 years, at a time when the 2008 economic crisis and subsequent recession has made life financially difficult for many. But as a result, we have now the 6th lowest council tax in the country, significantly and substantially below neighbouring authorities, and our residents' perception of the quality of council services and the value for money that they provide has increased substantially. It's been a difficult investment climate, and unfortunately that has led to a shortfall against target of £400,000. But this likelihood was reported very early during the year and has been reported in earlier Treasury Management reports. Nevertheless, we continue to outperform our benchmark peers on Treasury Management investments, and the returns remain one of the highest of any local authority in the country, more than double the average for local authorities, and at one of the lowest levels of risk. All transactions complied with the Council's agreed policy statement, Treasury Management strategy limits and practices, and all accounting codes of practice. All investments remained within the agreed strategy targets and approved prudential indicator limits. The capital financing requirement and the minimum revenue provision requirement were both nil. I therefore commend the Treasury Management Annual Report to Council for noting, in accordance with the Constitution, our Treasury Management practices and accounting codes of practice. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Thank you. Anybody wish to speak? Is that agreed? Oh. Councillor Gardner and Councillor...
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like, first of all, to thank the portfolio holder for that fascinating briefing he gave us on Treasury Management at the start of the meeting. But I would really like to thank is the Treasury Management team on the outturn that they achieved this year. There was an anticipated shortfall, but as we know, interest rates are still remarkably low, and reinvestment is something that is really mitigated against at this time, and we do not wish to tie ourselves in to low interest rates until such time as interest rates increase. The return does compare well with other authorities. Yes, other authorities in some cases do get better returns, but they take very big risks. But we maintain our policy objectives. We invest prudently. We look after that money, which is the ratepayers' money. We maintain liquidity so that money is available to us when needed. And we still aim to obtain an optimum rate of return, which is very good under current market conditions. I also welcome the initial investment which has been made in diversified credit funds. This will help push up the interest rate we receive, which will mean there is more money available for the benefit of our residents.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not sure I can agree with what colleagues have been saying earlier. It does seem to me that over the past few years, the policy is, in effect, to take money from taxpayers, government and the council service users and generate a surplus. The surplus is then put into a reserve, and the reserve is then lent out to others at a subsidised rate. And I think it's perverse that a council raise raise year in year more money than it needs. It cuts back on services. I was told today, for example, that they'd managed to sweep one area of the council 4 times this year, and if you think 4 times is sufficient 6 months into a year, then I can only imagine that you do a lot of sweeping yourselves. We increase fees purely to generate more money to lend to third parties. We increase fees, which is a tax on our residents, whether you pay it out of your pocket, through the council tax, or through the parking meter. It's still a tax. And it's perverse that those car parking charges are increased to generate a surplus so that we, the tax and service charge payers of Basingstoke, can lend £5 million to the London Borough of Newham or £5 million to Lancashire County Council. Council taxpayers of Basingstoke see their council tax kept at an artificially high level so we can lend money to the likes of Goldman Sachs, BNP Paribas and the Deutsche Bank. But that is exactly what this administration does. We should be a council providing decent, low-price, good-value services to its citizens, but it seems to me that it is in itself a money-vacuuming operation, taking money from us, lending it to banks, to councils and to government, and I believe it provides funds to invest in offshore low-tax regimes as well. I don't believe that's the role of this council at all, and I also don't think it's funny.
Thank you. Councillor Phillimore.
As a newcomer, in the light of Mr Heath's earlier comments and concerns, our investment policy, we believe, needs a thorough review by the Audit and Accounts Committee. This current financial policy might be excusable or at least understandable if the administration made a decent return on the 163 million it has stashed away. Over the last 5 years, the returns from our cash mountain has halved from 6 million to 3 million. We should be investing our funds more efficiently, getting a better return and not increasing our charges for burying our dead or parking our cars. There are alternative investments that can be made in schools, in roads, in housing. We face a housing crisis in our town. Over the last few years, housing associations have raised over 3 billion, paying interest rates of between 3 and 5.5%. These are the sort of investments we should be making. The 163 million belongs to the people of Basingstoke. It should be directly invested in this town.
I believe that was the councillor's maiden speech. Councillor Isaac.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I suppose I'd really like to respond to Councillor Pearce's remarks more than anything else. We are running this council's finances prudently, but we are using the money that we are generating. Even in the year where we've accumulated a budget surplus, we are investing in 27 new homes overall to prevent homelessness and to avoid use of bed and breakfast. I think you'll have to do rather better than to refer to evidence of the amount of time that roads are swept. I've no evidence that we're cutting back services, quite the reverse. We do build up strong capital balances because we know that we're going to be using that money in the future. We've got huge plans for the growth and regeneration of this borough. That regeneration's needed, particularly in relation to investing in new homes in Manidown, investing in new jobs in Basingview, regenerating Basingview. The fact remains that whatever Councillor Pearce is saying is that and as the leader said, we have the 6th lowest council tax in the country. So I can't accept that at a time when the government is year on year reducing the amount of grants it gives to councils, that the policies that we're adopting of making sure we have substantial cash balances which earn us interest so that we can keep our council tax low and invest in services is anything but the right way of proceeding. Perhaps the alternative we should look at, can I sort of be the ghost of Christmas yet to come? Hopefully it won't be. And let's refer to the Labour-controlled Wolverhampton City Council. Let's just peer over the abyss, or there. The council in Wolverhampton, Labour-controlled since 2010, population of 250,000 people, so a little larger than ours, but that council is £293 million in debt and saddled with interest payments of £27,000 a day. It's just announced 800 redundancies amongst officers and out of a target of 2,000. And it's got to find another £50 million worth of savings. So I think that the residents of this borough are probably pretty glad that the finances of this borough are in the safe hands of this administration.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Cubitt.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to say that there is obviously a link between the returns and the risk and the reward ratio. Whenever we've had meetings in the past, councils have been very mindful of the risks that they've been taking, and you don't get high returns with low risk. And I think that's a very relevant thing for some of the councillors to bear in mind when they make the comments that they've made. Also, on public record, I have stated on a number of occasions, and it's very timely that Councillor Isett has just made a reference to a profligate local authority, that I don't really think it is appropriate for us to be lending money to other local authorities. I think it's a risk in our portfolio, which is, in my opinion, a nonsense. And if we have a portfolio that we wish to invest in, I don't believe we should be investing in fellow local authorities who have a greater requirement for borrowing because of their structure, and I would like the council to be very mindful of that in terms of risk going forward. Finally, we all know that we have this sizable amount of assets both in commercial real estate and in investment, and yes, it does mean that our council tax is low, but we also have to be very careful with the proposals that the Chief Executive made reference to at the beginning of this meeting, because the government and the previous coalition government have stated on a number of occasions they don't think it's appropriate for local authorities to be holding large reserves of cash. And that money that we have accumulated thanks to the residents in part and to the historical legacy of the real estate we ended up with. And therefore, what I really urge all councillors to be really careful about when we have this debate going forward on the proposed amendment to the purpose of our authority, that we safeguard our assets for our residents and our residents alone, because I don't think it's appropriate for our assets which have been accumulated to be plundered either for incompetent authorities that happen to be in existence in Hampshire or authorities that happen to be considerably poorer than we are. Thank you.
Councillor Cousins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just having a listen to the debate tonight, there seems to be certainly some concern from our side, but there was also some concern from Councillor Cubitt. With that in mind, Madam Mayor, I'd like to propose an amendment to the recommendation so that there would now be a 2.3, which would read as follows: that Council asks the Chairman of the Audit and Accounts Committee to consider reviewing the comments made during the public participation section of tonight's meeting, along with the comments of members during this debate, and to undertake a review of the Treasury management policies in order that the concerns raised can be alleviated. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Could you please repeat that so that it can be noted?
Not a problem, Madam Mayor. That Council asks the Chairman of the Audit and Accounts Committee to consider reviewing the comments made during the public participation section of tonight's meeting, along with the comments of members during this debate, and to undertake a review of the Treasury management policies in order that the concerns raised can be alleviated.
Please bear with us for a moment.
Madam Mayor, can I raise a point of order?
Could you just bear with me a moment? Right, is that seconded? Right, Councillor Gary Watts. Councillor Raphael, do you wish to speak to the amendment?
No, I wish to raise a point of order, Madam Mayor. Could I
Under what section?
9.2, could the Chief Executive look at it, please?
Right. Councillor Gary Watts moved a motion following the question from the member of the public, which was then defeated. This amendment that has just been put sorry, is substantially the same motion. So therefore, under 9.2 of the Constitution, it means that a similar motion cannot be raised again within 6 months. On what section?
The question from the public, in this case Martin Heath, referred to a limited number of the items in this whole report. This whole report is now being asked to be reviewed. They're two totally different things. One is a minor element of the whole report, and the other one is the whole report. Thank you.
Right, I have been advised that it is very similar to, as I just said, the previous motion, so therefore I'm not allowing the amendment.
Point of order.
We still have
Point of order.
What point, under what?
Oh, 8.7F. I believe Councillor Isaac deserves a personal explanation of what I was saying, since he named me particularly.
Point of personal explanation is not if you've been named, but it is if you have been misunderstood.
Oh, I'm constantly misunderstood, Madam Mayor, so I think therefore I have every right to stand and make my point. I am now.
What was misunderstood?
Well, he misunderstood my point about road sweeping, didn't he? Is that okay, Madam Mayor?
So what?
Yes or no? Is it okay?
If you want to explain how he missed your point on road sweeping, please go ahead.
Thank you. My point was that when I was a child, the man with the brush used to come round once a week, and that was a fiercely Tory-controlled area that I lived in. Now, they come round 4 times in 6 months. And that was the point I was making about. That is a cut in services. It was just an example. Thank you, Madam.
Right, thank you. Can we now move on? I have Gary Watts as a speaker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm disappointed in your judgment, but we accept that decision, Madam Mayor. We're disappointed. We think it's worthy going to the committee to review our strategy. We've missed our modest target of 2.2%, and we actually got a return of 1.9. Yes, the council is doing okay, but we could do a lot better. We have 8,000 people on the housing register, and we had last year we had Sentinel, but went to the open market and borrowed £70 million. Why wasn't the council involved with Sentinel? We could have got a far better return than we're getting at 1.9%. And if we actually invested that money in homes, we could either give housing associations to build homes, or we could actually build council homes ourselves, and we would get a better return of that 1.9%. So we think we, at the council, should be reviewing our strategy at the next committee. And it's disappointing that you over there don't want to do that. And it's mentioned tonight, Councillor Cubitt mentioned about the combined authority. If we do get some powers from the Hampshire County Council and the government, they're going to cut money with those budgets, so probably about 10%. So it's really important that this council looks to maximise its revenue from all sources. And the Treasury management is an ideal source which we should be looking at. And it's disappointing that we're not. And it's already been stated tonight, we've already missed the boat with the green energy. We're getting 15%, you can get 15%, but now that's going to be cut because this Tory government doesn't actually believe in green energy, so they've cut the subsidies for green energy. So much for the greenest government ever. So disappointed that you don't want to review your strategy, because I think we could do a lot better for the people of Basingstoke and Dean, but we'll keep on fighting for the residents of Basingstoke and Dean. Thank you.
Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When the new strategy for investment was taken through ARGA, and as others have referenced, there was concern raised. There was considerable scrutiny of it on the basis of saying, what were we doing, what were the risks, and what were the concerns? And it was the fact that we were being presented with an option for greater risk. But it was also presented with the strategy that would deliver to fill the revenue hole that was being identified. And a number of promises were made, a number of commitments were given, and assurances were given. And I think it's right that in light of what we've now seen, and it's an ongoing position, this isn't new. I mean, the fall in return against the targets is not new. It's been an ongoing issue year on year for a number of years. It's right that we review that new strategy to be assured that what we have actually done and are seeking to do is the thing we signed up to in the first place. There is nothing wrong with that. That's a healthy thing to do from an audit perspective. And I think the concern also, I picked up what the portfolio holder said, and I would hope that the Audit and Accounts Committee would examine this issue around our fund managers, because obviously something went on there, something occurred that created an issue that resulted in a late investment and resulted in an issue with our fund elements there. Now, obviously that directly affected the bottom line, it affected that investment, and we should be aware of what went wrong, and I'd like to know more on that, to be perfectly honest, as a simple backbencher, let alone the members of the Audit and Accounts Committee doing a good piece of scrutiny. I'd also make the point that I think councillors are right. If government is going to continue down the line as it has done with other authorities, with looking upon local councils' budgets with avarice, those that have got money, we need to be very, very careful that we do not see ours taken from us by some sort of government initiative and shift in probably finances and the way they go about things. You know what the Treasury is like. That in some way puts our residents at a disadvantage. We have been very healthy as a council for many, many years because of the very well-made decisions by both Conservative and coalition councils and administrations of this authority over 20-30 years. The finances of this authority have been well managed by many councillors in this chamber and those who are no longer in this chamber. And we should not be putting the family silver at risk in that context. But we should also be wary and aware of what others outside of this borough might seek to do with our money if we're not careful and managing it properly. So the issue really becomes one of, forget the comments about other councils, because all councils of all political persuasions are being hammered by central government with cuts. And to be fair, it's the Conservative chair of the Local Government Association, Sir Merrill Cockle, who is actually leading the charge on behalf of all authorities to say to government, for goodness sake, if you don't stop cutting us, if you don't stop hurting us, there are very few services that we will not be able to deliver. We're going to be hit so hard. And we are. Look at the 80% cuts to youth services that our county council is dealing with. So there are many issues here that are layered that we need to take very, very carefully. But the principal one is that the investment strategy, what we originally signed up to, what members opposite and members on this side questioned quite vociferously, quite carefully, does need to be reviewed if we are continuing not to meet our targets for whatever reason that might be. It might be a perfectly clear explanation, but nonetheless the explanation needs to be given for the good probity of our accounts and put right if there are things to put right.
Councillor Keith Watts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd made a resolution not to be so rude about the Labour group this year. So I would just ask for a clarification of their policy with regard to housing. Now, Councillor Colin Phillimore, shortly before he became a councillor, distributed a leaflet in Overton saying Conservatives and Liberal Democrats voted for building of hundreds of houses, only the Labour group voted against it. Now, I'm delighted to know that the leader of the Labour group wants to spend money on housing, but could I point out, first of all, you've got a plan for housing if you're going to do that.
Councillor Leeks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question was, what return are we getting on Costa? Because we hear that we're only getting 1 point whatever it was %, but I understood that we were getting nearly 10% from Costa, and yet the Labour group didn't want Costa.
Councillor Leek, sorry.
Mayor, I just wanted to remind Council that Treasury management strategy is something we consider every year. It comes to what used to be called ARGA and will now come, I'm sure, to audit and accounts. It goes to Cabinet. It goes there, I think, in sort of February time. I'm looking at our Chief Financial Officer, and he's nodding. So it goes in February. That is the time. We've had every year to discuss it. Why should we suddenly be having to review it in July? Because somebody who's keen on selling you solar panels has come along with a very long question. It's a nonsense. The time to review it is next February when it goes to ARGA or Audit and Accounts. And could I just remind Councillor Phillimore in his excellent maiden speech that we represent Basingstoke and Deane and not this town. The money belongs to all residents, not just those who live in Basingstoke. Thank you.
Thank you. Come to the end of the list of speakers. Who?
Can I have a personal explanation, please?
Point of personal explanation.
Just an answer to Councillor Leek. I appreciate that there's more than Basingstoke, and I'm proud to represent Overton, Laverstoke and Steventon, who elected me.
Right, could I ask the leader to sum up, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm really not going to dwell any longer on this. We've been going on far too long already, particularly with... Yes, very tedious at times it can be. Oh, now that really is an insult, but never mind.
Could we let the member speak, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want really just, in summary, to say that the interest income from the Treasury management activity is an important source of funding for council services. Of course, the way that it is managed needs to be looked at. That is why it is looked at each year, and fully looked at each year, as Councillor Leek has just pointed out. The portfolio has been actively managed within the strategy parameters, which we would expect it to be, and it delivers an above-inflation return, and an above-inflation return that compares extremely well with any other local council. And all that has been done at a lower level of risk. And we hear so much scaremongering about somebody's going to come along and steal all of our money. Isn't it rather more prudent to begin with to make sure that where we put our money is safe and secure in the first place? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Right, it's been moved and seconded. Is everybody agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Right, item 2. I'd like to ask the leader to introduce the 2014-15 revenue and capital outturn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's me again. Right, the revenue outturn shows a variance of 1.3 million, or a 1% saving against budget. So, and this was achieved because expenditure was at 99.1% of expected levels, and income was fractionally over anticipated receipts at 100.3%. Now this surplus is intended to be used as follows. 730,000 of it is going to be used in allocations already agreed by Council in December 2014. 183,000 is going as additional housing capital spend to purchase dwellings under the ESP scheme as part of our actions against homelessness. And this brings the spend on that scheme to 1.25 million in support of families in need. 350,000 is being carried forward, is for carry-forwards rather, or additional funding requests, which includes 170,000 allocated to Manydown. And so, in accordance with council policy, an allocation of the balance, that's 103,000, or if you prefer it, slightly less than 1/10 of 1% of the total council budget, is going into the Stability and Resilience Reserve. So we are not tucking vast amounts of money away into reserves. Capital outturn shows a total spend of 21.5 million, including a 10 million capital investment, but service-related spend was 7.5% less than anticipated, resulting from a combination of savings, delays, advanced and additional expenditure, which are detailed in the report, but the most significant of which were 460,000 of additional spend on housing renewal grants, 323,000 of delayed spend on Basing View, public realm and infrastructure, and 250,000 of delayed asset management spend on various sites. We should always strive to improve budgetary and forecast accuracy, and a major effort has been made and will continue to be made by the finance team in conjunction with operational colleagues to improve realism and accuracy of projections. Variance of 1% on revenue and less than 10% on capital is a very creditable performance by any commercial standard, and thanks must go to all of our officers for their efforts. The report details the various ups and downs in income and expenditure, and no doubt members who wish to will find all sorts of minor variations on which to comment. But the most significant savings were in employee costs and in benefit transfer payments, but neither variance was more than 2% of its budget. The most significant increases in income were in fees and charges and rents, but they were offset by a shortfall in grants and contributions and in investment income, which has already been dealt with at extraordinary length when discussing Treasury management. Council is asked to note the revenue and capital outturns, that the ongoing revenue savings will be included in the budget monitoring reports for 2015-16 and then in the budgetary strategy for 2016-17, and to agree the transfer to and from reserves as indicated in Appendix 1A and 1B of the report and the revised capital programme detailed in Appendix 7. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Yes, seconded. Thank you. Councillor James.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to talk about some of the underspend within this budget and within this report. It was mentioned that by the leader that there may be reason for us to comment in such a sort of how dare we actually comment on some of this report. But I wanted to talk about the homeless underspend. There's a £50,000
under what part of the...
Point of explanation. I never said how dare they comment, or in any way indicated that they should not comment. I just made the point that they would possibly comment.
Thank you. Councillor Ms James.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to make reference to the homeless underspend of 50k, the Homeless Prevention Fund. It concerns me that there was such an underspend at a time when we had 63 people, additional people in bed and breakfast in last year. Also it concerns me that the reason that it was given, it was that the private sector, they found it difficult to find accommodation within the private sector. But the issue is that we had additional people, 63 people in bed and breakfast during that year. I welcome the additional money that is being spent on the ESPs. I think that's good news, and the 17 units and the additional 5. My only concern, and from this side our concern, is the perpetuity of those units. If we look at the sovereign units just recently, where we lost those units again, people found themselves, and I'm sure that some of those 63 people were people who were living in accommodation that was then lost. So I am concerned about the perpetuity of such an arrangement and what happens to people in the future. What I also am concerned about is the reduction in the prevention budget, the homeless prevention budget. I recognise that we are spending more money in different areas, but when we're being told that there's going to be an increase in homelessness, and I really hope that the budget will be able to meet the needs going forward. I also want to raise the variation in relation to the car parking. this council actually made money out of car parking at a time when we have empty shop units within the town centre, a town centre that is struggling. If any of you have walked around Festival Place or even our own units and seen the shell of a town that we have at the moment, I think that we need to think about our car parking charges. And also within Norden and within our own ward, we have seen so many more commuters actually parking in the ward. It is such a major problem because people are not parking in the car parks and coming out of the car parks. So I urge us to look again at the charging, and is it not the time now that we should be reducing car parking to help the town and to ensure that commuters, or find a way to ensure that commuters use the car parks and not the surrounding streets. I also want to raise the issue of the public transports where we made money out of, or made savings, £131,000 of savings from public transport. But just to remind you, there are people in this town that cannot get to a GP. There are people in Buckskin and Winkleberry who are struggling to get to a GP. They have to come into town and back out again. So those people in Winkleberry have to come into Basingstoke and then back out to Popley. Many people are not able to access their GPs. Surely we could have done something with this saving. Why did we not do something with that saving? And I don't think that we should be proud of some of the savings that we've made and the income generation that we've made. I think, in fact, I think it's quite damning at a time when so many people haven't got access to services. There is a cut in services. However you look at it in this town, there is a cut in services and people are struggling. So there are some good things within this, but I also think I have some real concerns about some of the initial items within it. And I want to praise you for the ESPs. I think that's great news, but I want to raise concerns about the increase in bed and breakfast. I think that really is concerning, and if that's what we saw last year, I just hope that we're going to have the money to meet the needs and the changes to the welfare reforms that are coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cousins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I'd like to say that I was quite pleased to hear the comments from the leader where he said that, and to slightly paraphrase him, that he wanted to strive to improve on the budgeting of projects. I'm a student of history, and of course being a student of history means doing lots of research. And in and amongst the papers there was a phrase which I'm sure I'd seen before. That phrase was delayed spend. And indeed I had seen it. It was in last year's. What's more, Madam Mayor, that they were against similar projects. We had a town centre improvements delayed spend last year, and we've got a town centre delayed spend this year. So in the interest of being constructive, I hope that we can improve the budgeting of our projects this year. I understand that it was under a different portfolio holder, which is understandable, perhaps why there was a delayed spend. There's a possibility of no bridges in the town centre. All he achieved was some new plant pots and some new paving slabs. So I open a positive hand to Councillor Reid, who I believe has the portfolio now, and hope that she has a lot more success than her predecessor did. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Isaac.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to respond to some of the comments made, particularly by Councillor Laura James. I'm grateful to her for her praise for what we've done in relation to ESPs. I think that does demonstrate our commitment as an administration to investing in new homes to prevent bed and breakfast and homelessness. And we have a very good partnership with Sentinel. Just let me reassure her that about the perpetuity, if that's the right word, perpetuity of the ESPs. These are under long-term agreements with Sentinel, and we continue to we have nomination rights with Sentinel. So there's no risk that those are going to cease to be put to that good use as far as we're concerned. You know, one of the benefits as a council of managing our finances well is that you know, we generated something in the order of £9 million worth of capital receipts from the sale of land to Network Rail and to the John Lewis Partnership. And also we got our 50% at last from Hampshire County Council on Manydown. I know that's equally welcome across the chamber. But you know, we're putting £4 million of that money aside for homelessness prevention. Another example of where we spent our money is in helping the disabled. One of the reasons we were over budget on that was that we made a grants of £1.177 million last year for disabled facilities, an additional cost to the borough of £462,000. But the important thing is we were able to do it. We were able to meet our commitments. On car parking, we have one of the lowest car parking rates in the area for charges. And we have free car parking, as I know the leader is very keen to ensure we all remember. This issue about empty shops, this is a nationwide problem, and so I don't think we should be visited with this sort of catalogue of gloom from the former Labour leader here. The fact is that because we've got money, we're spending that money on revitalising the top of the town. So, as far as I'm concerned, there's a lot of good that's going on here, and I don't think we should take too much notice of the voices of doom and gloom to my right.
Thank you. Councillor James. Gavin James.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have to say, first of all, in terms of the homeless budget, I look forward to the day when we completely underspend the homeless budget because we didn't have any homeless people. That day hasn't arrived, and it seems fairly sad that we've got an underspend. We may have helped more families, but I do know there's a camp outside Basingstoke where currently all the homeless are living together. They've got a little fire pit there, and because of our ASBO rules, they've been removed from the town centre because we don't want visitors seeing them. We'd rather hide our problem in the woods somewhere. But there we go. Something to be proud of when you talk about John Lewis is not far from John Lewis, the news store. We have a load of homeless people in one of the richest boroughs in the country, and we should be deeply ashamed of that bit. The second thing I would suggest, and I've mentioned it before, I don't think we should use the word savings in this. There's efficiencies or there's cuts. There is no such thing as savings. It's one or the other. We talk about savings not being cuts, but let me give an example. In here we've saved £21,000 on public toilets because we closed one. That's a cut. You used to go there and pee, and now you can't. It's not an efficiency saving, it's a cut because a service has been removed, along with the toilets, the sinks and everything else, apart from the building looks awful, by the way. The other thing I'm concerned about is delays, because as Councillor Cousins mentioned, these delays we see them all the time. Now these delays are actually cuts of a different type, because you notice that we saved £352,000 on employees. Now to me, delays in things only happen for two reasons. Either one, things are delayed because you haven't got the officer time to draw up the contracts, to commission the projects, to agree the projects, design the projects and carry them forward. They just sit in an in-tray for a bit longer. And that may be happening, and that may be some of the delays. Alternatively, delays are caused because the contracts were drawn up, the work was commissioned, but unforeseen things have come up because we didn't spot them in the first place because we didn't have the officers to do it properly. Therefore, £352,000 in staff is not efficiency if you're delaying projects. It's a cut and it's a failing. So I think there's an awful lot to be proud of in this borough, and I think I will talk about the top of town. It has improved, it is bright. All town centres are struggling, particularly areas such as this, where your top of town is rivaled by some modern shopping centres. But we have a lot to be proud of. I'm very proud of our town centre, and I hope more people come to it. The car parks are normally full. We've had lots of exciting and colourful events at the top of town to try and invigorate it. So I'd hate to talk down the top of town. I think we should always talk it up, because some fantastic shops, fantastic efforts. What it does lack, of course, is some clean, usable public toilets. But it has an opportunity for the future, but it will interfere with your £21,000 saving. So I'll just raise those concerns so you know I know about them.
Well done.
Thank you. Councillor Gary Watts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to talk about the fees and charges aspect of this report. When this administration came to power in 2006, we were actually raising £4.9 million from fees and charges, and today it is at 6.3 and rising. Some of those percentages we've seen, football pitches, has gone up 30%. Central shuttle bus has gone up 40%. Bulky waste has gone up 60%. Annual ticket for the Vine car park up the northern end, 50%. And a new grave has gone up for 60%. So Madam Mayor, they're freezing the council tax, but they're increasing all the charges and fees, increasing by stealth. So the residents of Basingstoke and Dean aren't actually better off. They're actually forking it out in a different way. So when they crow good news story, we froze council tax, there's stealth taxing everywhere. I'd like to talk on some of the underspends as well, and like car parking, 97k over target. I mean, that's what we budgeted for, so we're actually charging people in Basingstoke and Dean to actually park in our car parks, and we got £97k over our budget. That's outrageous, and Councillor James is quite right to point that out. You know, we've got empty shops in the town centre, and we're actually charging people to come into Basingstoke for car parking is absolutely appalling. Planning appeals, 250k. I mean, this all comes back to when the Conservatives were playing politics with Manydown 5-6 years ago. If we agreed to build on Manydown, we wouldn't be forking out this 250k on planning appeals, and we wouldn't be at the mercy of developers like we are at the moment if they got their act together years ago. And I noticed in the budget as well, we still had 350k short due to the delays in Manydown procurement of master planning. So we're not even getting a move on with Manydown, so we're still at the mercy of a planning inspector by planning appeal. So we really need to get a move on the Manydown. We need to get an outline planning application in there to stop all these planning appeals. So yes, there's some good news in there, but if you look at the underline, 350k in cutting members of staff, I mean, that's not good news for the people that actually lost their jobs here, is it? So yes, we're making some good progress, but you look in the detail, there's a lot undercurrent here which we need to improve. Thank you.
Councillor Mrs Reid.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I feel the need to respond to suggestions from the opposition that we aren't committed to helping the homeless in this borough. I can categorically state that we absolutely are, and we can point to the work that we are doing at the moment, which underlines that. It's already been mentioned that we put 4.5 million into a homeless and support fund, which is there to support the most in need in our borough. We've bought 17 ESP dwellings so far. We have another 5 currently going through legal, and plans to purchase another 5 as soon as possible. So that'll be 27 dwellings to help to reduce bed and breakfast. And colleagues on all sides have worked with us on the map that we're working on supporting people, and know the commitment of this administration to ensuring that we actually provide those services, those vital homeless and supported homelessness services that are facing cuts through the cuts to supporting people through Hampshire County Council. And our commitment to that is absolutely clear and underwritten, and members of the Sale on all sides are perfectly aware of that. I'd also like to thank Councillor Cousins for his interest in the top of town. I'd like to reassure him there is far more going on there, as Councillor Gavin James has suggested, than just a few planters. No plans for the bridge, I'm happy to say, but plenty of other things going on, and we have absolutely focused the festival, for example, on the top of town. It's been fantastic. The top of town has been animated. We've had hugely increased footfall and very good feedback from traders. We're also trying to assist traders with a new bid, business improvement district for the top of town, where they can all work together and improve the top of town. And we have various other schemes going through, and we're looking at the alleyways and cleaning up and lighting, etc., etc. So I'd like to reassure him, because he's obviously very concerned. There is plenty going on at the top of town as well.
Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's important just to put the ESP point in context. The point we're making, and I think, while welcoming, of course, what is the investment and what it's seeking to achieve, is the experiences that we've gathered from those in the sovereign properties who found themselves evicted and found themselves homeless as a result of the policies of sovereign and the way in which it was gone about. Now, if these are for 10 years,
the question begs what happens at the end of that period in the way that it's being dealt with and managed. And those agreements, and that's part of the agreements and part of the relationship that's been established in the ESP policy to begin with. So there are questions to be asked, quite legitimately, and there are concerns to be raised based upon people's genuine experience of what they've gone through thus far. So we'd like to see that explored, and we think it's a fair question to ask. Now, when it comes to car parking in the top of town and the town in general, I think the question we've got to ask ourselves is, if the Vine Meadow has seen a 50% increase in the charges for car parking, then I sure as know now where the residents in my ward are seeing commuters day in, day out, literally force them out of their cars on their driveways, park across them, their junctions, their roads, and make it incredibly unsafe in our ward at the moment because they just won't pay the money to park in the car park because they consider it to be too expensive. Now that is a serious issue, and if it's full, then there are other issues. It isn't full, actually. The Vine Meadow is not full, that's one thing for sure. If others are full, that's a debate that needs to be had in the place. But I'm telling you that the experience of our residents, we've got the photographs, we've got the evidence from there that we're presenting to officers of unsafe local roads from commuters, and we need these issues addressed. And it is directly as a result of your car park increases, because the commuters tell us as much. In terms of the local town issues, I think you can talk about this being a national problem, but at the end of the day, this is our town centre. And I'd quite like to understand, since the change in ownership of Festival Place, I've seen a change in the lettings policy. I think we've all seen a change in the direction of travel. And there are particular units in Festival Place, for example, that have been empty for nearly 3 years now. Some major units in Festival Place, in fact, that have been empty for nearly 3 years. And it begs the question, why? What is it about those new owners and their investment policies and their strategy for running Festival Place that would allow that to be the case? Now, of course, that has an impact on our town centre. And it begs the question, as the public authority, as the council with responsibility, you know, all that effort that went into creating Festival Place to be the success that we want it to be, and it has been for so long, and we want it to continue to be. We want to see those units filled. We want to see the success continue. But it does beg the question if we've got units that are being left empty for more than 3 years. And on that basis, you know, what we do with shop owners, and we speak to shop owners like you do, you know, again, they raise the issue of car parking, the car parking charges that affect them and their employees as much as the people who visit the shops. And I think there are issues to be answered there with the top of town and the traders and those small businesses, because we want to see not just the sorts of businesses we have there, some of which we'd like not to see, the payday lenders and the other things that we've spoken about before, but we'd actually like to see an increase in the small independent retailers, those that get support from this council to set up and be entrepreneurial, be that business person setting up in our town centre that's supported by our council to be successful and employ local people. Those are the sorts of things we'd like to work with you on to see the success in our town centre. And that's the sort of thing that the shop owners in the town centre want themselves. So there's many things that you could be looking at here that would be very important to the success, continued health of our town centre, that we're raising as genuine concerns that I think are worthy of discussion and worthy of a conversation. To achieve actions and outcomes rather than just simply talking about it or having delayed spend year after year after year. Admitting the things that you're doing, because you are, to be fair to that. But is it having the effect that we want it to have is the question. The other issue to raise in terms of homelessness is it's not questioning it in the way that you've raised. It's saying whether the response that you're making meets the need that we see. And very clearly from what others have said this evening, in particular, you know, both Councillor James to my right and Councillor James to my left have said there are issues here around homelessness that do need to be addressed, particularly around the county's cuts, but also around the bed and breakfast and the homelessness areas that we see. You can see it in the budget that you presented in this report tonight, the variances that are there and the increase in the problem. And we have to be absolutely vigilant to what we're doing and absolutely focused on it, because this is people's lives, and if we are having people live in the way that has been described this evening, it is a disgrace on this council that we're not doing more to address it.
Thank you. Could I ask the leader to sum up, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just reflecting on what Councillor Harvey has been saying, and I finally find myself in the strange situation of agreeing with what he's said, or at least most of it, because that is what most of it that he was talking about is exactly what we are trying to do. And whilst that does not directly reflected in the paper, because it wouldn't be expected to be reflected in the paper, there are a lot of initiatives which we are working, I think, on a very good cross-party basis in many cases to try and approach. And I would never want to claim that as an administration or as a party that we have a unique ability to have only the right answers, and that other people cannot form a very positive contribution in working on these problems. There are many things that we can do, some things which we have less ability to do. He talks about the ownership of Festival Place, but of course the ownership of Festival Place has changed again, so it's first of all finding out who owns Festival Place might be a good starting point, but we will be getting to that point, I think. When it comes back to the report, I think that just over 1% variance on the revenue outturn is a really good performance given the large and complex nature of the Council's budget. And the really good thing about it was because of a great deal of vigilance in looking at the reporting and identifying where there might be underspends and overspends, we were able to take decisions in December to find additional funding for key priorities, so that the money has not been just left there accumulating as an underspend. It's been already put to work on our key priorities. And those ongoing savings, if there are ongoing savings, will of course be reflected in this year's outturn and in next year's budget. I think overall it's a very good performance of financial management, of which we ought to be proud. There's always more things you could do. With the benefit of hindsight, we could all do things slightly differently, and it's absolutely right that we should reflect on where we could do things differently and improve on our performance. But I do think that thanks ought to go to all of our officers for their pursuit of providing improved services but at lower costs, and particularly to Kevin Jaquist and his team under the leadership of Councillor John Isett for their careful, prudent and positive stewardship of our resources that really has contributed significantly to the success of us as a council. There's inevitably going to be difficult times ahead as we face the challenge of dealing with further reductions in government grant funding, whilst at the same time we've got to lay the foundations for sustainable growth for the borough that will ensure an even better quality of life and increasing prosperity for all who live here. I think that residents can be confident that the finances of their council are in very good, safe hands. I move the recommendations, Madam.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Is everybody agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Right. Move on to B, to approve the committee calendar for the 2016-17 municipal year at paper D. Everybody agreed? Agreed. Item 10, notices of motion. We have none. Item 11, to receive the minutes of the meetings as listed on the update. Are we happy to agree those en bloc? Councillor Keating.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I refer you to the Scrutiny Committee meeting on the 16th of June, and I refer to page 5635. I need to find it myself now. 5635. Now that you've all found it, under the item 815, public health review, towards the bottom of the page, the first bullet point refers to the cuts implemented by Hampshire County Council on mental health support and people with learning difficulties. And I raise, Madam Chair, to say thank you. To say thank you to the officers of the Council and to Councillor Robert Tate, the Cabinet Member, who was both groups were instrumental in helping us to save a project which deals directly with support for mentally ill people and for people with learning difficulties. It was run by the Shore Trust in Southam, our ward. Obviously the catchment area for clients is wider than just one ward. Shore Trust told us that they intended to close it down told us at the end of June that they were closing out on the end of July. And I was very proud to be a councillor, working with officers and Councillor Tate, that in 3 weeks we were able to find an alternative organisation which will take on the responsibility of running the project, and that's MENCAP, very good organisation, and we sat down with them and gave them our support wholeheartedly, and the council via its officers and Councillor Tate have helped to make sure that that project is maintained and is likely to grow now. So I just want to say thank you and to give the recognition where it should go. Thank you.
Thank you. So the rest of the minutes agreed? All agreed? Yep, thank you. Item 12, questions from members of the council. Question 1, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll tweak it as I go. As a Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Regeneration will no doubt be aware, it was announced that the freedom to relax Sunday trading laws will be granted to local authorities as part of the summer budget last week. Could the Deputy Leader assure me that this option is being explored by the Council and the potential economic benefits are being considered?
Not sure, is that a maiden speech? Won't get that one by me. Councillor Mrs Reid.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'd like to thank Councillor Smith for his question. In response, the Council welcomes the flexibility that these changes are likely to give to enable local decision-making on Sunday trading hours. We're very keen to support local businesses and traders and enable them to satisfy any demand from local residents and visitors. So we view this as a very positive move from the Government. When we receive the detail of the Government's proposals, we will be considering any potential benefits that this could bring to the borough, and as part of that we will, of course, as soon as we can, seek the views of local business representatives and traders.
Supplementary? No, thank you. Councillor Hussey. Thank you. Cabinet Member for Regulatory Services.
Thank you for your question. I can confirm that the Council inspects all of its trees on a rolling programme, moving from ward to ward to identify trees that require pruning or felling in order to meet its duty of care as a landowner. The trees are assessed by one of the Council's tree officers, and tree surgeons carry out the identified work once the survey is complete. Where trees are being felled for non-safety reasons, and often on an area-wide basis, officers do engage with the affected community. A recent example would be in the Buckskin area, where a tree officer attended the Buckskin Neighbourhood Partnership meeting to outline proposals for that area, and held a drop-in session at the Ridgeway Centre where residents could ask questions about the proposed works. However, where the work is being carried out in the interest of safety and prevention of damage, prior notification of residents does not normally take place, although officers do advise ward councillors, any local volunteer groups and parish councils before work commences. This is because of the nature and volume of tree safety works, which range from pruning, removal of dead branches, crown lifting or crown reduction, and sometimes felling. Whilst I can understand that it would be onerous for all minor works to be notified in advance, I do believe that it is essential that proposed future felling works are made known to local residents. I have therefore asked officers to ensure that this happens in the future, except in the rare case of emergency works being required at very short notice. As to the replacement trees, these are provided where it is appropriate and possible to do so. This does require checks to be made with statutory undertakers to ensure that there are no conflicts with underground services. Unfortunately, due to changes in utility guidelines, it is not always possible to plant a tree in the same position. Furthermore, any replacement tree planting is carried out during the planting season, and this does not always coincide with the felling of the tree.
Supplementary?
Very much so, Madam Mayor. I think the answer fails to recognise that 7 trees were cut down in Neville Close, and not one resident was informed. And whilst I understand the tree replacement policy, the residents don't know it. They don't know whether the tree in front of their house is going to be replaced, and if it is, when it's going to be replaced. They're still kept in the dark. I've had 6 trees cut down in Shepherd Road. Not one resident was informed in advance.
Is this a question?
What I would like to know is, what is the portfolio going to do to remedy the fact that there are people in my ward, in Neville Close, in Shepherd Road, in Logham Road and Morley Road, still waiting for an answer to the question that's here. When will they be told why the trees were cut down in front of their homes, and when the tree, if it will be replaced, or why it won't be replaced? They still need to know that. Looking forward, fine, but what about my residents at present are extremely angry that trees have been cut down in front of their own house and they didn't know until they got home from work or home from the shops? That has not been answered.
Thank you. I can't comment on that one specific thing, but I can speak to you offline and speak to officers and get an answer to you for that. But I have said that I have spoken to officers since your question was received on Tuesday, and I have discussed with the head of service that from now on, that it is essential that proposed future felling works are made known to local residents. So your specific issue about that road, we can discuss offline, and I can speak to officers and get you an answer for your residents. But moving forward for other issues, I will, as I say, I have confirmed that we will inform residents.
Happy to accept that offer, Madam.
Thank you. Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As per the order sheet.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, the Cabinet will be considering a recommendation on the 28th of July. That recommendation is based upon consideration of this Council's motion that went before the relevant committees on numerous occasions and has been to Cabinet on 2 previous occasions. If Cabinet approves the recommendation, then it will be placed back before full Council on the 22nd of October.
Supplementary?
No, thank you, Mayor. That's adequate. Thank you.
Right, well that completes the agenda for this evening. Thank you all very much. Sorry? You were in there.